Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Digital Thinkers Hexagon Hacks. My name is Rebecca Schofstall, and I will be facilitating this week. So thank you for joining. Today, we will be covering user settings related to screens in Hexagon EAM. If you happen to have missed a previous session, they are available on YouTube. I did put a link to the Digital Thinker YouTube channel in the meeting chat. Last week, Tyler discussed closing codes. The week before, Jordan presented on work order types. So a lot of great content. So feel free to go to the YouTube channel. You can even just search for hacks and it will return all of the Hexagon Hacks recordings. If you're new here, these sessions are just quick 15-minute sessions. Each week we have a different member of the team presenting. And this week we are beginning our system admin hacks. So we've covered topics related to materials and inventory, maintenance, so think of work orders and equipment. And today we are starting with system admin. You'll see the schedule there on my screen. Please note we will not be meeting the week of Thanksgiving, and then we will wrap up the Hexagon Hacks series the week before Christmas. If you have any questions throughout the session, feel free to toss them in the meeting chat and I will keep an eye on those. So today's topic, as I mentioned, is user settings related to screens. So in EAM, for any given screen, there is a section, okay, on the screen, and the section is labeled user settings. And so the fields that you see here on my screen are going to be the focus of today's session. So we'll go ahead and just start with the report. Sometimes we'll get a question of, oh, we created a custom purchase order report, or we want to use the work order comprehensive report instead of the standard work order report. And what the report field does is it controls the report that renders or generates when you click on the print preview or print report button on the screen. So let me show you an example of this. So here I am on this work order screen. And for those of you that may not be familiar, this screen is available under Administration, Screen Configuration, and then Screens. So for the work order screen, I have associated the work order comprehensive report. Perhaps you have a custom work order report. And basically, this allows you to control which report generates on the particular screen. So if I were to preview the report for this work order, it should be the print work order comprehensive report. And as you can see here, okay, the work order comprehensive report is the report that was created since I had updated the report for the work order screen. So that's fairly straightforward. Let's look at the next field here, this employee filter. This allows you to specify the employee type to apply to a screen. Okay, well, what does that mean? Essentially, only employees with that type will be listed in the employee field lookups. Okay, so we can use the PO receipt screen as an example. If I switch back over to EAM, and I'm just going to look at the PO receipt screen, you'll see that I've applied the receiver employee type to this screen. So only employees that are associated with the receiver type will be listed in the employee field lookups. So a couple of things to note. First of all, these types are set up as system codes, and the entity is PRTP. Another thing is on the employee screen, there is a types tab, and this is where you can associate one or more employee type to an employee record. So if you define an employee filter for a screen, only employees with that matching type will be listed in the field lookups. So if I go to the PO receipt screen and I open the received by field lookup, okay, I'm only seeing a handful of employees. So these are the only employees that have the receiver type associated with them. If you leave the employee filter blank, okay, then you're not going to be filtering by type. And let me just go ahead, I will add that to one of our other employee records here, just so you can see how it impacts the field lookup. Okay, so now I also see Bailey listed. And like I said, feel free to toss your questions in the meeting chat. We got a lot to review in a short period of time. So the next one here is the digital work app icon. This is more related to mobile, which will be the focus for next month. But basically the icon here would be displayed if you're using the digital work home screen. And I've just included a quick screenshot. So basically, here I have a barcode icon associated with the physical inventory screen. So that is the icon listed on the digital work home screen. So let's move on and talk about startup actions. So essentially the startup action is what happens when you navigate to a screen. And I've captured some screenshots so we're not having to, toggle back and forth too much, but this is an example of no action. So for the startup action, we have a handful of options available. Okay, so the first one I'm showing you is the no action. Basically, the screen opens without running a data spy and without displaying any records. Okay. Now, if you've had a chance to look at the release notes for 12.3, there is a new install parameter in 12.3, which is coming out in November, and this is SVC def. And essentially, you're going to have control in split view mode as to whether or not the screen opens in edit or search. Edit is what you're seeing on my screen here, where it's just going to the first editable field. Okay, that's current functionality. But with that new install parameter, you would be able to default the cursor in the search field. Okay. So this is no action. The next one is run data spy. If run data spy is selected, the screen is going to open and run the user's default data spy. So here for the PO receipt screen, my default data spy is Rebecca's receipts. Okay, so it's just going to run the user's default data spy. The next is remember data spy, and I have a before and an after. So before I left the screen, okay, I was on all finished PO receipts. I had adjusted the sort order and I had a quick filter. So if remember data spy is the startup action, then when I return to the PO receipt screen, it is going to remember my last data spy within my current user session, and it's going to remember the quick filter and the sort, okay? So it's sorting, okay, based on how I had it in list view, and I have the quick filter of packing slip recorded. And then the fourth startup action is remember last value. The screen will open to the last remembered value. Think of that as the last record. So I was viewing this specific PO receipt 10041. And when I returned to the screen, okay, it opened up that specific record. Now keep in mind, this is if you're opening the screen. If the screen is part of your screen cache, you already have that screen open, right? So you're just toggling back and forth if it's included in your screen cache. This would be if you were kind of going back to the screen from the menu. This is also applicable. Okay, I'm just going to do a quick show here. Keep in mind, this may also help with your field lookup. Right here for the equipment field lookup, I have the startup action set to run data spy, and that may or may not be helpful, but for the work order screen, if I come out here to create a new work order and click on the equipment field lookup, as you can see, it is running the data spy. Okay. Perfect. All right, next, let's talk about the split view display. Actually, what I will mention real quick here is on the screen, there's also the startup view, and you have split, record, and list. I think most of us are familiar with that, but just a quick reminder, this is record view. This is list view. This is split view. Okay, so those are your three options of the view when the screen opens. And quickly here, let's run through the split view display. This controls what is displayed in the summary grid. So think of that as what's in the summary part of the split view. Okay, so that section on the left-hand side. If the split view display is standard, then the first line is going to be the code description, okay? And if there are any icons present, they will be listed as well. Then the next three lines are going to display three fields with a label, okay? And this is depending on the screen. So these are standard. You're not controlling the three fields that are displayed. So for our equipment, it's org department status. For our requisition, it's org class status. Okay, so this is just the standard default for EAM for the particular screen. Now there is an option for grid fields. Okay, so with grid fields, this all comes from the data spy. So the system will display the first 5 fields based on the data spy layout. It does skip checkbox fields, which is why we're not seeing the out of service. So off on the right, this is my data spy layout. So it skips the checkbox, okay? So then we have class icon, department, serial number, commission date assigned to, the first 5 fields in my data spy. Now, the next one is the mixed. And this is one that a lot of people prefer because it's always going to show the code and description, okay? But the next 3 fields are going to pull from the data spy layout. So rather than pulling from just the standard fields, okay, so here it was just standard, it was org, department, stats, I have no control over that. If I have the split view display set to mixed, okay, it's going to pull from my data spy. Once again, it does skip the checkbox fields, okay, but we have our icon displayed here, okay, in the header part where it has the code and description, and then our next 3 fields, department, serial number, commission date. So start thinking about how making some of these adjustments to your screen may help the user experience. If you've put a lot of effort into those data spies, you may want to update the split view display. And then if it's a screen that folks are typically creating new records when they navigate, maybe you wouldn't want to run the data spy versus those that go to a screen and they're frequently viewing, a list of open work orders, for example. Now, one last thing to show you. I know we're a little bit over time, so bear with me if you can, but the last field is the auto refresh timer, okay? So essentially, an administrator can enter an interval at which a list view, that's key, will be automatically refreshed. Okay, so this has to be between 30 seconds and then it goes up to like 9 million or even higher than that. So it's in terms of seconds. Okay, so if you have a big monitor on, in the room, folks could look up, maybe it's for, open work orders. If you would want this to auto refresh, you can use the auto refresh timer for the list view. The thing to keep in mind is it does not work if the screen is screen cached. So if I were to add the work order screen to my screen cache, the system's going to let you know the auto refresh timer for this screen will be disabled. So just keep that in mind. Now, I know that was a lot of information at one time here. For those of you that need to hop off, I understand. Thank you for joining. Be sure to check back next week. Stephanie will be presenting on Screen Designer. And feel free to connect with us. If you have any questions, feel free to stick around and enter them in the chat, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, hope you all enjoy the rest of your week.